Okay, I think we'll get started. So today we're going to talk about the Grotthuss mechanism. This is a really important concept. It's something that you can readily understand even at this introductory level, but it doesn't really fit anywhere. So this is kind of a standalone lecture here at the end of Introduction to Physical Chemistry 2. But it's important again, and you should know this or be familiar with this moving forward. So let's start with data, actually. If we look at the mobility of ions in solution, there's an anomalously high mobility for water, or for H plus, compared to other ions. Also high mobility for OH minus as well, but we'll focus here on H plus. And as we compare here, proton 36 times 10 to the minus 4 compared to sodium, which is 5 times 10 to the minus 4. I'd say, well, so proton is lighter, so maybe that's why it's moving faster, but still not a factor of 6 times faster. And so the Grotthuss mechanism explains this mobility. Let me just say a couple of things about the units here on mobility. Some kind of bizarre unit here, centimeters squared per volt second. So like it feels like an area per volt time or something like that. What's helpful is to break this into centimeter per second, which is a velocity, right? That's the mobility, and then volt per centimeter. And so how these measurements are made is that you kind of take a standardized 1 volt per centimeter, and then you determine the velocity at which the ions are moving 1 centimeter. So it's a centimeter per second per applying a 1 volt per centimeter field to this. All right, well, now let's see how this physically works. So let's plop in a sodium. And let's say we've got this field applied and the sodium wants to move this way overall. Now, if there isn't a field, then it'll just be diffusing all over the place, and the mobility is still relevant there for sure. But in order to make the measurement, we have to get it going in one direction. So let's just stick with that. And we want the sodium to pop out over here. Right? Well, for it to do that, this particular sodium molecule, so if we could go in here and paint a little star on that sodium ion, then that little star would be what we would see when this guy gets all the way down here. So it would have to physically move along a path, maybe kind of a chaotic path, stochastic path, as it moves its way to here to get to this side. And so we could monitor the time it takes to go from here to here, physically moving that exact sodium ion. Okay, well, that would be something. We could record that. Now, let's place, in place of this, let's place a H plus. And we'll make this H plus blue. And what do we know about H plus? Well, it's going to glom onto a water. Right? And so it will actually be there as H3O plus, or sometimes H5O2 plus, if it's coordinated to several waters. But let's just take one here. Well, what's going to happen here? This can quite readily form a regular bond, right? But if it does so, then this is no longer plus, and it will weaken one of these guys, perhaps this one. Right? Which could then, in its network, form a bond with this one, and perhaps weaken this one. So we come down to here. We have this bare proton glommed onto this water molecule and this one, and maybe then this forms, breaking this bond and creating the free proton over here. And finally, well, not finally, then this bond forms, breaking this bond. Now we have the free proton over here, and then this bond breaks, and this bond forms, and we have now this proton that was up here and is now down here, but is not the same proton. But a proton is a proton. So there's no way to physically distinguish one proton from another. We can't actually go in and paint one blue and one black. And so the effect of this is as if the proton moved from here to here, but that exact proton did not have to physically move like the sodium ion did. Instead, we have this network of hydrogen bonding that can rapidly make and break bonds, and these so-called proton hopping allows this to end up over here much more rapidly. And so that accounts for this anonymously high mobility. And this is called the Grotthuss mechanism. So the Grotthuss mechanism is the one in which this proton travels via proton hopping. Okay, well, let's look at an application of this in biology, a very important one, this idea of aquaporins. So aquaporins were discovered by Peter Agri, and he showed that there were these protein pores in cells that regulated the water content in the cell. And as you might imagine, that's very important. And so these channels allow for water to pass in and out of the cell. Now, we have a problem here, though, because the cell also needs to really take care of its pH, right? And so if we move protons in and out of the cell, we could rapidly change the pH. And in fact, in some of the areas of the cell, just a small amount of proton transfer can dramatically change the pH because the volume is so small. Well, let's look at this setup here. This is a cell membrane, which is more or less impermeable to water. This is representing the protein channel, the aquaporin, which allows the water to go through. And I've kind of done a cartoonish picture here. It's not exactly how things are happening, but the main idea is going to be there. So at the very narrow part of that pore, several waters, in this case I'm only showing two, but several waters get sort of stuck in place, but not permanently stuck in place. They stick in place and then can fluctuate out. And so there's kind of a conveyor belt where this guy hops out, and then this one hops into there, and then the next one hops into place. So we can push this water through this channel by sort of this flipping roll mechanism, or one water goes to the next, and so on. Then the question is, well, what about this Grotthuss mechanism? Can't we zip protons in and out of this cell then because of this channel? So if this was just an open channel that allowed water to pass through as sort of nearly bulk water, then what could happen is this could make its way through, right, which it will try to do, right? And so then this becomes H plus here, and then this bond forms, breaking this one, becomes H plus here. Maybe this bond forms then, but we've got a little problem here. We break this chain because of the nature at which the aquaporins are holding the water in that central pore bit, which is like 4 or 5 waters, something like that. Here I've shown 2. Maybe not even 4, some small amount of water. They get held in place, and it disrupts this Grotthuss mechanism. So we aren't able to transfer H plus through this very efficiently. And so it's certainly not via the Grotthuss mechanism. And so that helps regulate the pH, or at least pushes the problem of the pH away from the aquaporins. And the aquaporins then can be solely responsible for pushing or for allowing water to come in or out of the cell. And so this is another application where the Grotthuss mechanism is something important to think about, and how nature has evolved to disrupt that Grotthuss mechanism and allow for water to be transported independently of pulling through the proton and changing necessarily changing the pH on one side of the cell or the other. All right, so again, Grotthuss mechanism, no real homework on this. Tell yourself the story of this, try to understand the differences in mobility, try to be able to start with a blank sheet of paper and see why the aquaporins work so well. If you're very interested in biochemistry, you might want to just read a little bit more about the structure of the aquaporins. There's some good references online that aren't too technical and will allow you to understand this in more detail than I've gone through here.